So in this video, we're going to learn how to multiply polynomials. So by the time you're finished watching this video, you should know how to multiply a binomial by a monomial, distribute a polynomial throughout another polynomial, and raise a polynomial to a power. So multiplying a monomial and a monomial. Just remember, monomials are the simplest type of polynomials. They're just one term. So they could have a lot of letters or they could not. So again, the first thing you're going to do is multiply the coefficients. The coefficients are the numbers in front. So you would multiply 5 times 3, and you would get 15. Okay, so once you've done that, you are going to multiply each variable by adding the exponents, okay? So I'm going to multiply x squared times x to the 4th. So I'm going to add 2 plus 4 to get 6, okay? Because you're going to add those numbers. Same thing, y4 and y, if there's no exponent there, we know it's an assumed 1. So y4 times y1 is going to be y5, because we're going to add those. Same thing over here, z3 times z2. I'm going to do 3 plus 2 and get z5. Okay. So if you can keep that straight, that you multiply the coefficients and you add your exponents, then we are going to be golden. So when you multiply a monomial and a binomial, when you're multiplying a monomial on the outside by a monomial, you're going to use the distributive property. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing we just did, except with the distributive property. So first off, I would multiply these two terms right here. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 3 and get 15. And then I'm going to add my exponents. So I'm going to add 2 plus 3 to get 5. So 15x to the 5th is what you get when you multiply those first two terms. Over here, you're going to multiply 5 times a 7 and get 35. And then notice if there's no exponent here, I'm just going to tack this x squared with it. Okay? So if there is no exponent, it's kind of like adding a 0. So it's like x squared. Okay? So I'm done. I can't combine like terms, and so that's my answer. So why don't you try this one on your own? Press pause, and we will go over the answer. Okay, with this problem, you should have multiplied 4 times 2 to get 8. And then you're going to add your exponent of x cubed and x to the 7th to get x to the 10 power. Then you're going to move over here and do 4 times negative 5, which is a negative 20. Then you're going to add x cubed and x squared to get x to the 5th power. Okay? Let me know if you have a question on that one. Otherwise, you are going to try this one again. When you've got negatives, be sure you distribute the negative too. So I'm going to distribute a negative to a negative, and negative 2 times negative 7 is a positive 14. And then I'm going to add my exponents of a 4 and a 9. So 4 plus 9 is 13. So x to the 13th power. Again, I'm going to distribute 2 times a 4. And negative 2 times a 4 is a negative 8. There was no exponent with that 4, so I'm going to bring down that x to the 4th that was with that outside term. Okie doke. So why don't you try this last example, which looks a little hard, so I'm going to do it with you. So same thing, I'm going to multiply my coefficients. And I know negative 8 times 11 is a negative 88. Now I'm going to add my exponents. So I had x3 and x2, which is x5. I had y2 and y7, which is y9. All right? I'm going to move on to my next term and do negative 8 times negative 5 and get a positive 40. I have x3 and x2, which is x5. I have y2 and 1y, and 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay? I am done because I cannot combine like terms. And that is how you multiply a monomial by a binomial. And this is an example of pretty much a hard one. Okay? Now, we're going to get into where it gets trickier, which is a binomial and a binomial. So in multiplying polynomials who have two or more terms, we're going to apply the distributive property multiple times. So the first part is the most important, how we rewrite the problem as two distributive property problems. Because then once I have a distributive property problem, I can solve each of those and combine like terms. So let's look at an example. So here is what a binomial and a binomial looks like. Got two terms here and two terms here. They will typically have a number and an x with a number, and then again a number and an x and a number. So the first thing you have to do is rewrite it as two distributive property problems. So how you do that is this first term times everything on the right. So how you would write that, your first term is 7x times everything on the right. Okay? So now I'm done with that 7x. And I'm going to do the second term times everything on the right. So that would be a 5 times 3x plus 4. Okay? So if you can set that up, you are going to be golden. So again, you do the first term and you rewrite that whole entire right parenthesis. You do the second term and then rewrite that whole parenthesis. That parenthesis is always going to repeat, okay? So now you just distribute. So you're going to do 7 times 3 and get 21. 1x and 1x is x squared. We're done with that term now. I'm going to do 7 times 4 and get 28. And I'm going to bring that x down with it. Okay? So again, an x times an x is an x squared. And then 7x times a 4 is just a 28x. Okay? So I'm done there. Now I'm going to hop over here and do 5 times 3x and get a positive 15x. And then lastly, I'm going to do 5 times 4 and get a positive 20. Okay? So once you have solved each distributive property problem, you are lastly going to combine like terms. So out of this first term, second one, third one, and fourth one, I know I can combine these two middle terms because they both have a variable of an x. So I will circle this one and circle this one. I would do 28 plus 15 and get 43. So there are 43 x's in that problem. Your last thing is to bring down that first term and bring down this last term. And since that 43 was positive, we'll put a plus in between them. Okay? So when you multiply a binomial, you are going to first rewrite it. You are going to distribute. You're going to combine like terms. And you're going to get 3 terms at the end. Okay? So let's take a look at some practice problems. I'll do one more with you, and then I'll let you try one on your own. So again, the first thing is to rewrite the problem. First term times everything on the right. So 3r times everything on the right. Okay? Next term is a negative 9 times everything on the right. Okay? Once you set it up as two distributive property problems, we're going to multiply. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, and an r times an r is an r squared. 3 times 5 is 15, and bring down that r with that 3. You're going to come over here. Negative 9 times negative 2 is a positive 18, r. Negative 9 times a 5 is a negative 45. Last but not least is to combine like terms. You're going to be able to combine the ones in the middle always. So 15 plus 18 is going to be 33. So there are 33 r's. I'm going to bring down my last term. I'm going to bring down my front term. And there was a plus with that 33. Okay? So notice again, you rewrite the problem, you combine like terms, and you have 3 terms on the end. It's most likely going to be a number squared with an r or an x, and then a number, a constant on the end, okay? So, it is your turn to try one. Just kidding, this is a hard one because we have x's and y's. We have z's and y's, okay? So, let's take a look at this one together. So again, I'm going to set it up like I always would. First term times everything on the right. So negative 5z times everything on the right. Okay? I'm going to do my second term times everything on the right. Okay? I'm going to distribute. Negative 5 times 7 is negative 35. Z times z is z squared. Alright? I'm going to do negative 5 times 2 and get negative 10. Z times a y is a zy. I just rewrite those. Y times 7z is a 7yz. I'm just going to combine those two letters together. Y times a 2y is going to be a 2y squared because there are two y's on there. Now, we have to see if we can combine like terms. The tricky thing to notice is that a zy and a yz are the same thing. Okay, so this is actually like a 10yz. The order of those letters does not matter. So I can combine like terms here and do negative 10 plus 7 and get negative 3 yz or zy. Bring down your last term and then bring down that front term. Okay? Okie doke. That was a really hard one. The last kind we're learning is a binomial times a trinomial, and it's just a little more work. We still set it up like we do. We do the first term times everything on the right. So I'm going to do negative 3x times everything on the right. So negative 3x parentheses 6x squared plus 5x plus 3. Then I'm going to do my second term, which was negative 8 times everything on the right. Negative 8 times 6x squared plus 5x plus 3. Okay? So now I'm going to distribute again, but it's going to be a little bit longer. So I would do negative 3 times 6 and get negative 18. X and an x squared would be x3. And then I'm done with that term. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. An x and an x term would be x squared. And then negative 3 times 3 is negative 9, and there was an x with that 3x. So notice it's going to go 3, 2, and then just an exponent of a 1. So come over here. Negative 8 times 6 is negative 48, and I tack on that x squared. Negative 8 times 5 is negative 40. Tack on that x. And then negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. Once you have all of those terms, now we just have to combine like terms. We're going to start with the x squareds. So then negative 15 minus 48 it's going to be negative 63x squared. Not cubed, squared. I'm going to start with just my x terms and get negative 49x. And then, like always, I'm going to bring down my last term, and I'm going to bring down my first term. Okay? So, if you have a binomial and a trinomial, we're going to have 4 terms instead of the original 3 that we had when we multiplied 2 binomials. Okay? We're going to come back to that later. So this was how you multiply a binomial and a binomial, and a binomial and a trinomial. So thank you for watching, and you can start practicing.